Hello, everybody. Welcome into the Fantasy Pros Football Podcast. I'm Ryan Wormeli, joined today by Andrew Erickson and by Jake Ciely from The Athletic. Guys, we are talking some rookies. We are sitting here the week after the NFL draft. We finally have landing spots for these guys, so we can start projecting out what we expect from them. And we're going to talk about guys that we think could be instant impact players as rookies. We're also going to look at guys that maybe make more sense as long-term investments. If you're in a dynasty league, as a guy you might want to hold. We'll also hit on some late-round sleepers and deeper league stashes as well. We're going to split this up into kind of two different episodes here for the back of the week. One of them will be wide receivers and tight ends. The other one will be quarterbacks, running backs. You are watching right now the wide receiver and tight end episode. I do want to also let everybody know that due to some scheduling for my travels, we are taping this earlier in the week. So I just say that in case there's been any kind of development or news update or, the Jags tell everybody that Travis Hunter is only going to play defense or something crazy like that. Just so we all know this, we are taping this earlier in the week. Erickson, how you feeling post-draft?
I'm feeling good. I'm excited, trying to figure out where all these rookies go in the rankings. I feel like I keep second-guessing myself on, well, I got to move this guy here, got to move this guy there, but in trying to stay somewhat in line with all the work we did pre-draft and not be totally influenced by landing spot, but also trying to understand, hey, landing spot does matter. Where this guy ended up going and when they were drafted does matter, but not totally throwing away all of the work we put in the last couple months for the coach to say, this guy's a stud. Oh, well, I got to move him up 10 spots because the coach loves him, because all the coaches love everyone they drafted.
Yeah, Jake, for you, like on the pie chart of evaluating a player, like what percentage for you is how you thought about the player before the draft, and what percentage is not only the landing spot, but draft capital, what round they went in?
Say 60-40. I'm a timeshare, so it really comes down to 60% about what I feel. Somebody even asked me, like, who's this year, Brian Thomas? To give you the example of last year, like, that wasn't thought to be the best landing spot, and I put that in quotes. It was a decent one, but not necessarily the best, and I was still super high on him afterwards. Despite that, there are players in this draft. I don't even know that we were going to talk about him. We don't have Jarquez Hunter on the list for the next show, do we? Anyway, I'll just throw it as a sidebar just in case. That landing spot, I wasn't super high on Hunter like some people, and that's a significant landing spot improvement. Pat Bryant was another one we could talk about. I don't think we have him on today's list. But there is one that, to your point, that Erickson has that I really thought long and hard about putting on my list that I had higher than his not even draft capital. Look, I'm teasing our own show. So that's it. I'm interested to see what Andrew says, because I struggled with wanting to put him higher because of what I thought before the draft happened.
Before we dive into the episode, Jake, what kind of draft stuff do you have going on at The Athletic?
I finally got to sleep yesterday because I was doing pick by pick. I did draft grades for all the teams, which their current potential value in redraft, and then Dynasty, 2 different grades. And then I had to update, and I did the rookie rankings, the Dynasty rankings, and the redraft rankings. So I finally got a little sleep last night, but I can tell you it was only half sleep because I legitimately woke up with a dream thinking about talking with somebody about the draft and where they ranked and stuff like that. Like, it's still in my head.
We are in that really fun week where, like, it's post-draft, but we're also diving right into I'm in 2 rookie drafts going on right now already, and it's pretty quick turnaround. We get the landing spots, and people are excited. They're ready to dive in and start adding players to their dynasty teams. I just want to remind everybody, all of our 2025 consensus rankings and tiers can be found at fantasypros.com/rankings. You can navigate to our rookie rankings there as well, both consensus rankings and for our staff rankings. Let's start off with the instant impact guys. Again, we're hitting on wide receivers and tight ends here, kind of as a general group. Erickson, we'll start with you. Who's the number 1 instant impact wide receiver as a rookie?
Went to the Panthers at 8th overall. Tetairoa McMillan, wide receiver from Arizona. I love this landing spot for McMillan. When we're looking at a potential rookie wide receiver who could flirt with the ceiling of 100 catches, I'm looking right at Tetairoa McMillan as that guy who can be the alpha in this offense, be the Mike Evans that Dave Canales has been looking for since his days spent in Tampa Bay, maybe his DK Metcalf time spent in Seattle. So you're looking at instant impact. There's an opportunity for a massive target share for McMillan in Carolina. Xavier Restrepo, first-round pick that's probably not going to fire. Jalen Coker was an undrafted free agent. They just signed Hunter Renfrow. Like, these are the guys that Tetairoa McMillan, a top 10 overall pick at wide receiver, was taken. And I know that his draft stock is kind of up and down heading into the draft, but the fact that he went 8th overall and the fact that we were talking about him, the Jaguars are going to take him at 5 overall. Like, that's who they're interested in. I know that started to get some steam as we got closer to draft night. I think him going top 10 solidified how the NFL felt about him, that this guy is an absolute stud, and he would have been the number 1 wide receiver in the draft had it not been for Travis Hunter going 2nd overall to the Jacksonville Jaguars, and they traded up to get him. So I'm really looking at this as a great spot for him. Again, talked about the connection with Dave Canales. Bryce Young, we've seen fuel fantasy production. It hasn't always been pretty, but Adam Thielen has been a fantasy monster producer in this Panthers offense when healthy the last 2 seasons because he's been able to command a very high target share. So I'm looking at McMillan, the accolades he had at the college level, specifically looking at 2023. He was just one of 3 FBS receivers to hit 1,396 yards, 10 touchdowns, 89 receptions. The other 2 guys to do it, Malik Neighbors and Rome Odunze, other top 10 draft picks. So this kind of reminds me, the comparison of Hunter versus Tetairoa McMillan reminds me a lot of the Bijan Jahmyr Gibbs draft, where all the hype was on Bijan Robinson when Jahmyr Gibbs also went in the first round. Yes, I get Travis Hunter went top 5, while McMillan went top 10, and I don't think that should be ignored. So I think that this is an instant impact, and he would be, if I was putting my chips on an offensive rookie of the year, not named Ashton Genty, it'd be Tetairoa McMillan.
So, Jake, for you with Tet, I mean, in terms of rookie drafts, he's going to be a top 5 pick in every rookie draft, obviously, with the talent and the capital and the opportunity he's going to get in Carolina. In redraft leagues, how interested are you in drafting him this year? Because if we're viewing him as instant impact, you would think he can be very helpful in that format as well.
I do, and I'll give you right now because I told you I already had those ready for you. So I have McMillan actually in my tier 5, which starts at 26 with my wide receiver we'll talk about here in a second. Goes all the way down to 40. It's an enormous tier because that's where we live now. But we're talking about he's in the group of Calvin Ridley. I have the Chiefs guys there because whatever, but I have him at 29 with Judy, Flowers, Odunze, Addison, Jameson Williams. So some number 2s, some number 1s. The number 1s like the Zay Flower and the Jerry Judy, I think is just a little bit of caution. Is like I love him, compared him to Drake London, and I think it's a great spot. My only hesitancy is also catching strays Leggett over here from Andrew. Like I don't hate Leggett as much as he does. I actually think that Leggett is better as a 2. He needed to be a 2. He needs to be a true 2. I think he's kind of sandwiched between a DK Metcalf or Shaheed type of wide receiver, which I think playing alongside McMillan actually gives me some hope that Leggett can come through this year, kind of the makeup of this team. But my only concern is that, Coker's undrafted, but there's talent there. Thielen's not gone yet. Bryce Young's probably not throwing 4,400 yards and 35 touchdowns. So it's just a volume standpoint where I'm hoping that Erickson's right. I do like McMillan. The fact that I have a rookie inside my top 30 is telling. I have 2, and he's one of the 2. It's just I'm wondering if he does get to 100 receptions just because of how much this offense might share the ball. If he walks into the Adam Thielen timeshare, the target volume that we just saw from 2 years ago, thumbs up. But I just have a little bit more hesitancy that it just might not be as consistent as everybody believes.
Erickson, what do you think about that tier 5 as a receiver in redraft leagues? I mean, rookie receivers, year in and year out, are one of the best investments you can make. Is McMillan falling into that category for you?
Yep. Yeah. So I have him in a similar range. So I have him at 21, but again, he's in a very large tier with the Chiefs guys, with another rookie wide receiver. So that's why we have to tier these guys out, because you could see making the argument for this guy or that guy. But yeah, like you said, I like being aggressive on some of these rookie receivers, especially when he just has a really clear path to targets and he profiles as an alpha. So it looks like an alpha, smells like an alpha, probably is going to be an alpha. So that's why I like McMillan.
We're going to talk about running backs in the other episode, Erickson, but I just want to ask you, because you put up this poll. I'm curious what the results were. You put up a poll asking in rookie drafts, so Marion Hampton versus Tet McMillan. I think a lot of people will have to make this decision. It might just come down to your positional need. We obviously are excited about both landing spots. What were the results of that poll, and do you have a strong opinion on it?
Do you remember what platform the poll was on? Was that on X or was that Discord?
It was on X, right?
It was on X? I don't know. I think I posted on Discord.
Wait, are we really calling it X?
Or on the or on the blue sky. I want to put it on there too. I can pull it up when Jake's going through his next player, but I don't know it right now. I know I would take McMillan. I know that's where I would stand. Okay. But I do think that if you were really desperate for running back, I'm not going to dissuade anybody from going.
Are you talking about redraft or dynasty? Rookie only.
I think for rookie dynasty drafts, right? That was your poll.
Drafts, yeah, that's what it was for.
Okay.
I think it was pretty close if I remember, but I would go with Tetairoa McMillan.
Okay.
How long ago was this poll? I'm on your profile right now.
So that's why I'm not sure if it was on Egg. I might have put it on. It might have been on the Blue Sky.
It might have been Blue.
I swear I saw
or
that,
Discord.
so maybe not. All right, well, let's go to Jake.
Oh, here we go. I found it.
Okay.
There you go. April 24th. Hampton versus McMillan. Dynasty, who you got? 63.8% to one side of it. Do you guys want to guess which side it was?
Hampton.
I'm going to guess it was Hampton because everybody's so excited about the Chargers.
Yeah.
It is Hampton.
Okay.
It is.
Okay,
So
but you
close,
disagree
though.
with it, Erickson.
Yeah, I think I would
you
go with
Tet.
the wide receiver. He's a top 10 pick.
Okay.
And I feel that
I'm
is-
okay with either, but it shouldn't be that much of a landslide.
It feels like it should be more 50-50. Would be
I mean,
And if I said 55, I would go to McMillan's side like Erickson.
yeah, I think that's fair. All right, let's get to your receiver, Jake.
Yeah, I mean, we kind of gave enough hints that probably everybody knows
Yeah.
at this point. Like, I didn't want to take this wide receiver. As you saw, I'm much more friendly than the people that you put me on guests with, because when you ask for these lists, by the time I get to it, they take all the good guys, and then I'm like, well, I guess I'm getting it. You saw, I left quite a few for Erickson to kind of be more balanced, and I took Travis Hunter, left the McMillan. I think that Hunter, you can actually, you know what, if you wanted to come for me, make the same argument about the target share being slightly a concern. I could see it because you have Brian Thomas. But then you look down in the rest of the depth chart, and there's really nobody there that's going to be even in his realm, that Hunter, in his realm of talent. There's nobody except for Brian Thomas that's in the same conversation, including, you know, the fact that Evan Ingram's gone. And I know people were hoping for Brenton Strange this year at tight end to be a breakout, but this is just going to throw some cold water on that. This should be a top 2 target share that we've seen in the likes of the Eagles, where we're talking 40, possibly even 50, 60% going just to these two guys. So I think that Hunter, the only concern of him, we've talked about it time and again in all these shows, he has Devontae Smith, Jackson Smith, and Jigba type of upside, and you just worry that, well, is he going to be used on defense? Is he going to see 80%, 50%? What's the percentage on offense? They made it pretty clear that they do see him as a wide receiver, which I'm going to say 90% of the offensive snaps, and I still feel comfortable with him a few spots in front of McMillan. He's that good of a wide receiver. The only concern we had talent-wise was just, is he going to play a lot of defense? So I think this is a great spot for him. And for those of us like myself that are hoping that we weren't all wrong as an industry on Trevor Lawrence, like, there's no excuses after this year for Trevor Lawrence. I will say this is the breakout if he's ever going to have one.
Erickson, what do you think about Hunter right now, just in terms of like how much of a risk do you think it is to draft him, whether it's rookie drafts or, I guess redraft is probably less of a risk, right? But in rookie drafts, I'm more thinking in terms of adding him to your dynasty roster, like, to what degree is it a risk with the added injury risk of playing more snaps, for whatever degree he's going to be playing defense if he ends up being better on that side? I mean, I know the Jags have talked about him as offense first, but it's really hard to not have that in the back of your mind as, like, there's an outcome here where you don't really get any value because he's not playing enough snaps. What's your risk tolerance with him right now?
I think that he does carry a lot of risk, kind of like you outlined, because, I mean, he even talked about how I'll retire if they don't let me play both ways, right? I mean, we'll see. I mean, you could talk a lot, but that's how he feels. Like, he wants to play both sides. So if there's an opportunity for him to play defense, like, he's going to play that. And those are snaps that my player, my fantasy team is taking a risk to get injured that is not getting any type of fantasy points. So that's something that I'm kind of keeping in the back of my mind. It's less about what his role is on offense. Like, when he's on the field on offense, like, he's going to produce. I have no doubt in my mind that he's going to be a major producer. You have Liam Cohen coming from the Rams system where, what do? They concentrate all the targets on the top 2 guys, and those guys eat. So that's what I would expect. When he's on the field, he's going to get the rock. When he's not on the field, Brian Thompson is going to get the rock. So I think even looking at the vacated target share from the Jaguars offense, this team is 6th in vacated targets from last year because of Christian Kirk, because of Evan Ingram. Like, these guys compiled a lot of counting stats in the offense last year. So if we're really not considering these Brenton Strange, Parker Washington as legitimate threats, then Travis Hunter could play a limited role and still see 100+ targets. If he hits that 100 target mark, like, he's going to be a producer for fantasy. So there's a reason why his ADP in rookie drafts, at least from what I've seen, there's no consistency. It's all over the place because, well, how much risk can you tolerate? And I always go back to what wins fantasy football leagues is upside, right? So at the end of the day, I think that we should be open to taking a shot on him because he was drafted 2nd overall. Like, a team traded an extra first-round pick to get him because he is uber talented. And I think just betting on that is the right approach. But at the same time, there's obviously a lot of risk involved.
I'm 2nd.
Did you say... Go ahead.
I was gonna say, I like in my rookie only, I go Ginty and then I go Hunter. I go Ginty, Hunter, McMillan, Hampton, and then Henderson at 5. I understand the risk, but I think you and I, when we had the conversation, I forget if it was with who was it, Debro? I don't know. Whatever one, you asked the question. You said if he goes to Cleveland, and we talked about the coaching, and that's the big thing. It's like he went to a team where we don't have to worry that next year there's a new coach who doesn't want to use him on offense as much, maybe wants him more as a corner. This is a coach that's going to be there, we would think, at least 3 years. So I think there's a little bit less risk. I'm not going to acknowledge and say that there's none, or I will acknowledge and say that I won't say that there's none, but I'm full in on Hunter. I would take him with the second. Although that being said, to talk about our own leagues for a second, I just traded out of the 102. I have the 101. I had the 101 and the 102. And I traded out of the 102 and stockpiled some picks for next year's draft class just because my team needs. But to say that, like, if I could trade out of the 102 or 103, drop down to 5 or 6, I don't think that's a different tier. I think we're still talking about the same class of talent in this year's class because of the running backs, where you don't maybe have to make that decision and you can trade back a few spots. And then if Hunter's still there at 105 or 106, you kind of almost just have to take him because now the risk is baked in.
I saw somebody say this on Twitter or X, and I forget who it was, so I'm sorry I can't credit them, but they said it feels too scary to draft Travis Hunter. It also feels too scary to not draft Travis Hunter. Like
I saw that. Yeah,
both of them
that
feel
really,
equally kind of terrifying, and I think that sums it up really well. So yeah, those are obviously the first 2 instant impact guys we're gonna name were the 2 receivers who went inside the top 10. So we got 2 other names here on the instant impact side. Erickson, who is your other guy?
Got to talk tight ends, and I'm looking at Mason Taylor for the New York Jets. The first 2 tight ends that we will also maybe get into one of them a little bit later on in the show. I don't know if we necessarily loved the landing spots just based on the target competition. That's not the case with Mason Taylor. This guy is coming in, and I think that he can immediately step in and be the tight end 1 in the Jets offense because it's Jeremy Ruckert, it's Stone Smart with 2 T's. Don't forget it. Got to have those 2 T's. And that's why I like Mason Taylor as a player that can come in and command a decent target share in this offense. At the LSU, he's Mr. Reliable. He has sure hands. He just turned 21 years old. And I know that he didn't post any single season gaudy numbers, and he's a amazing yards after the catch guy. I don't think that he profiles as that. When I watched him, he reminded me a lot of Dalton Schultz, where it's like, okay, if the offense is good, it's effective, then this guy can produce in this offense. And that's what I think Mason Taylor could do, given that his main competition for targets outside of Garrett Wilson is Allen Lazard, Josh Reynolds. And I think when it comes to these rookie tight ends, sometimes it's just simple as, well, can this guy command a target share in this offense? I think Mason Taylor could do that. And I think that Aaron Glenn talking about after they drafted Mason Taylor saying that, hey, he can do it all tight end. Like he can block, he can catch passes. So to me, this guy's going to be playing around 90 to 100% of the snaps. And what do you see with all the tight ends that score fantasy points? That's usually they're around. They're just on the field a lot. So I get that Mason Taylor isn't viewed nearly as talented as the Tyler Warrens or the Colston Lovelands. But from a fantasy perspective, I think this guy can make some noise similar to like what we saw with Sam Laporta his rookie year. Maybe not to that extent because I think Laporta was a much better prospect, especially after the catch. But Mason Taylor's going to play a ton. And I think that's all we can ask for when it comes to some of these tight ends. So Mason Taylor, for me, might be an instant producer for the New York Jets.
Am I seeing this right, Erickson, or is this a typo that you have him tight end 13 in redraft? Or is that a typo?
I'd have to double check on that. That does sound very aggressive. Let me just
well, that was I was looking at standard. If I look at half PPR, it's tight end 21. So maybe the standard one.
Interesting. I was like 13 does seem a little aggressive.
I was like I'm impressed with you planting your flag, but
yeah, I put him. Okay, yeah, he's tight end 21 next to Zach Ertz. So okay. Neither of them will break a tackle. So right where he's supposed to be.
Yeah, Jake, does tight end 21 sound too high, too low, or just right for Mason Taylor?
I want to know why Erickson hates Mason Taylor. I'm at tight end 15 and half-point PPR. Here's why. I don't have either of the big names, Loveland or Warren, inside my top 20, but I will take a shot on Taylor over Ferguson, over Hunter Henry, over Cade Otton, who's just not a red zone option for them, over Brenton Strange, who I brought up before, even Kyle Pitts. We're done with Kyle Pitts. I don't care that they didn't draft anybody to be a threat to Darnell Mooney and the rest. You're just done. Like, if you want to take him at 17, that's fine. That's when I'll finally, go back in. But Erickson's right about everything when it comes to Mason Taylor. And my comp was like Austin Hooper, so same world as Dalton Schultz. Peak Austin Hooper is what we're hoping for. And 15, like if he actually outperformed like Goddard or Kincaid in front of him, I wouldn't be shocked. It's just walking into a great situation. He's right. It's not the best stylistically, skill-wise, big threat after the catch. Like he's just a good tight end. But he fell into a really great spot. And let's not forget, Justin Fields and Cole Kmet hooked up for plenty of touchdowns and opportunities in 2022, where, like, I know there wasn't Justin Fields every single game, but a lot of them were with Cole Kmet, and it's not like he's not somebody who won't use his tight end. He could easily be his number 2, behind Garrett Wilson.
Mason Taylor is my favorite of those like second round tight ends from the NFL draft in terms of like instant impact. Just the opportunity is so great. We're not hitting on those other guys, but just to mention them briefly, Terrence Ferguson, Elijah Arroyo. Is there any interest in those guys, Jake, from your perspective, or do you think Mason Taylor is like very much separated from them?
Mason Taylor is very much separate. Like I did 35 tight ends already ranked for this year. I just told you he's 15. Mason Taylor's 15. Tier 4 has the other 2 for me. And then the only other one, Ferguson's at 30. Gadsden, mine, who we're going to talk about later, is at 27. Like they're so far out just because their opportunities just aren't there this year. Hopefully next year, but I just don't. Maybe Ferguson if a lot of things break right, given this the Rams and they do like their tight ends. But as of today, we're assuming like is Higbee just done, or because he kind of showed back up, like is it going to be Ferguson from day one? So I think a lot depends on what that shakes out. If you told me today that we know right now that we're going to have Ferguson as the third option for the Rams and Taylor as the second for the Jets, I'd probably almost put them back to back.
What do you think, Erickson?
For Ferguson and...
Yeah, just those other guys. How wide is... I mean, I think it's clear that Mason Taylor has an obvious path to fantasy relevance year one, given the opportunity. How wide a gap is that for those other guys that went in the second round?
I think that he's a tier above just because he just has... There's a reason why he's the clear-cut instant producer. I didn't even consider the other guys because they have veterans in front of them that may impede their progression in a similar way that Zach Ertz was in the way for Dallas Goedert for all those years. Zach Ertz has been in the way for a lot of young tight ends. And sometimes tight end is a hard position to learn as a rookie. But the way that the Jets have just talked about Mason Taylor and the fact that Aaron Glenn is coming from the Lions where they didn't have any problems putting a lot on a second-round rookie tight end. He's already seen it play out. So he's already seen this path of succession when it comes to a young player. And Mason Taylor, look, he's got the NFL bloodlines. Like, he's going to be ready to go. Like, from day one, he's going to be a guy. It's like, waiver wire week 1, who are we picking up? Mason Taylor. Like, that's going to be the guy because he ran 95% of the routes. He's going to have a ridiculous snap rate. So I think it's clear-cut. He is the instant producer. But I would say to be careful about overvaluing that in rookie drafts, right? Because we fell into this a little bit. Remember the Greg Dulcich versus Trey McBride debate? Oh, Dulcich. He's so much better because he's producing year 1. Trey McBride was stuck behind Zach Ertz, and now Greg Dulcich, I don't even know what team he's on, and Trey McBride looks like the best tight end in the NFL, not named Brock Bowers.
Let's go to the last instant impact guy here, Jake.
Yeah, I'm going to go over to Houston. I'm going to say Jayden Higgins. I really had some comparisons before was kind of a mix of Marvin Jones and Dante Moncrief, but like I think the good Dante Moncrief, and I think the big thing that you like about both of them is potential touchdown opportunities. And you go back to Marvin Jones, talking about somebody that was a wide receiver too for years. And yes, it was only 900, 1,000, getting close to 1,100 yards. But again, that touchdown opportunity. And this is exactly what Houston needed. And I know they got teammates back together. But Noel's a threat to Kirk. And I don't think he's going to take Kirk's job from day one. I think that Higgins will be the number 2 from day one. I know some people drew Nico Collins comparisons. Actually, Dane Brugler over the Athletic. It was like they drafted the same guy. That was his comp. So what if they're the same guy? Like if that's the actual comp, cool. I have 2 Nico Collins. Okay, sign up every single day. So I think that Higgins is in play for somebody that could put in wide receiver 3 value immediately as a rookie. It might be more of that, and no, not stylistically at all, but I'm just bringing up the player for fantasy comparisons. It might be the Deshaun Jackson where it's 1 week you get 20, 1 week you get 4, 1 week you get 20, and then, there's a 10 mixed in there. It might be a little bit of a roller coaster, especially because he's a rookie, but you'll live with that as your wide receiver 3.
Erickson, what do you think about Higgins?
I think that he was one of the biggest risers after the NFL draft for me. I moved him ahead of a lot of the other second-round rookie wide receivers that were taken that I wasn't sure exactly where they would go because I think that the landing spot for him in Houston is amazing. C.J. Stroud is going to be his quarterback. he can be a day one starter, whereas Noel has to wait behind Christian Kirk at least for a year. So you have a little bit of a slower burn with him. And look, when Higgins and Noel were on the field at the same time, Higgins they both produced, but Higgins slightly outproduced Noel. And that's just showing how good a receiver Higgins is in his own right. And the Texans took Higgins first. They valued him more than Noel, who they were to get at the end of the third round. So I think that he's a really good prospect, and I think that this is a great spot for him. And I think that he might be undervalued because I know a lot of rankings pre-draft didn't have Higgins ahead of the Luther Burdens necessarily. So if he just kind of falls because of we're focused on what we had pre-draft and not acknowledging post-draft enough, then I think that he's going to be a super value, and I think that he can be, yes, like Jake outlined, an instant impact player. I mean, think about how high were we drafting all these Texans wide receivers last year? We had 3 inside the top 5 rounds, right? And now Jayden Higgins is going to be probably someone that you don't have to take him in round 5, even though we were drafting Tank Dell in round 5, we were drafting Stephon Diggs in round 4, Nico Collins in round 3. So I think that he's a good investment.
We spent a lot of time on these shows debating between the 3 Texans
and then they all got hurt
last summer. I had forgotten about that. That was not etched in my memory. So thanks for that reminder. I want to remind everybody listening that it's the best time to be a basketball fan. All the thrills and playoff drama, done sitting on the sideline and ready to win some real cash. Check out Pick 6 from DraftKings. When it comes to basketball payouts, DraftKings Pick 6 posterizes the competition, including prize picks. When you hit all your picks, you'll score higher minimum payouts on Pick 6 than flex plays on prize picks. And best of all, you'll win even more cash if you outscore the competition. Track your picks for a shot at huge cash prizes. That's all there is to it. Pick 6 is available in most states, including Missouri, California, Texas, Georgia, and more. Don't settle for a smaller payout. Switch to Pick 6 and cash in your basketball knowledge. New players get 50 in Pick 6 credits instantly on just a $5 entry. Basketball playoffs are here. Cash in with Pick 6 from DraftKings. Download the DraftKings Pick 6 app now and use code FANTASYPROS. That's code FANTASYPROS for new customers to play $5, get $50 in Pick 6 credits. Better payouts, bigger wins, only with Pick 6 from DraftKings. The crown is yours. All right, guys, let's go to the Dynasty holds and long-term investments. Erickson, you're starting us off with the tight end here.
Yep, going to the Chicago Bears. Very crowded offense with tight end Colston Loveland, who was the first tight end drafted in this year's draft. And I think that we just have to remember the capital that the Bears drafted 10th overall as the tight end went off the board and how talented Colston Loveland is as a prospect. And we just have to keep in mind, Cole Kmet has an out in his contract 2026. So there is a pathway where this super talented tight end from Michigan, who just turned 21 years old, broke out at 19 years old. Yes, it's very possible that he doesn't hit in year 1 because this, again, the Bears offense is very crowded. Cole Kmet is still on the roster, but there is a path where we just have to wait another year, and then he's slated to absolutely smash as Ben Johnson's first pick in this Bears regime. Like, that was the guy he wanted. Everyone's saying, hey, we got to get offensive line. We need to draft a pass rusher. Ben Johnson's like, nope, I want this tight end as part of my offense for the future. So even Ben Johnson acknowledged in the presser after the draft where he said tight end is the second hardest position to learn besides quarterback. So even he is saying that, yes, we are expecting a lot from Colston Loveland, but at the same time, we have to be realistic with the way that our offense is set up right now, that maybe he doesn't have amazing numbers out of the gates. But I just don't want to overreact to his landing spot and get away from his profile and as a prospect, because this is what made me mistake with Trey McBride. Like, going back to that comparison where it sucked that he was stuck behind a veteran tight end for a year, but then once that guy was out of the way, he absolutely smashed. So I could see Colston Loveland potentially on a similar career trajectory where he's a top 10 tight end, but he even has better draft capital than Trey McBride. So, and I would say too, there's a potential out here where maybe Ben Johnson says, hey, I'm not going to value DJ Moore and Rome Odunze. Like, those guys were carryovers from the last regime. This is my team. This is my offense. And I want to feature Colston Loveland and Luther Burden. I'm not necessarily saying that's going to happen, but I think it's in the range of outcomes where he takes on these new guys as, no, these are the guys I want to feature in my offense. So there is still a lot of targets up for grabs, given how many targets Keenan Allen saw last year, 9th in vacated target share from last season. So Colston Loveland, maybe if they're trying to find a number 1 check down option for Caleb Williams so he doesn't hold on to the ball for so long, maybe Loveland's that guy. So I would just say be open to the long-term commitment with Colston Loveland, which is why I have him here.
I don't care about Cole Kmet at all in terms of how it relates to Colston Loveland. Like, Colston Loveland's success will be determined by Colston Loveland. You don't take a guy 10th who has this kind of prospect profile. I'm not saying he's guaranteed to hit, but I'm saying if he doesn't hit, I don't think it'll be because of the existence of Cole Kmet, in my opinion. If Again, I've done a couple of rookie drafts already. One of them, we're into the halfway through the second round. Loveland, he's been drafted, but he wasn't drafted in the first round, and I found that really surprising. I have Brock Bowers in that league, which is why I didn't take him, because that's like the one guy where, like, okay, of course you don't need him. But for any tight end needy team, I'm all over Loveland in the back half of rookie drafts. I think it's a good addition here, Erickson, just because of the nature of the position. People shouldn't look at this and say, Ben Johnson, this is going to be Sam Laporta, like, now that he has a new tight end. So I do see him more as like a dynasty investment, but in dynasty, like, I am 0% scared off in any respect. I'm very in on Loveland with the landing spot, so I'm right there with you. Jake, what do you make of him, as a tight end, both for long term and maybe for this year?
Yeah, so definitely more long term. I mean, and long term starts in 2026. Let's also not forget where Ben Johnson came from as a tight ends coach in multiple spots, including the Lions. And he moved on, as we saw. Well, not he is by himself, but they moved on from T.J. Hawkinson, who he was using well, and then right over to Sam Laporta. So, I see the appeal. Again, there's nothing I can really pick holes in because, as you said, you spend that kind of draft capital. This isn't to sit him on the bench and be like, okay, maybe we'll figure something out in 3 years. The only concern here that I have is honestly, like, I'm terrified for all those takes I had about a Rome Odunze a few weeks and a month ago, because what Andrew says, like, Ben Johnson's coming into a team where the people that are only his people are the ones he drafted or signed or maybe did nothing with, like DeAndre Swift, like big winner, but we're still like, let's chill out. Like, he's a winner, but let's not go crazy. I'm just kind of tying this into the conversation to say, like, somebody has to take the blows here. And I think we're all saying it's Cole Kmet, and there could be a lot of 2 tight end sets, which is where I'm going with this. As his rookie season, there could be 2 tight end sets. Well, that means Rome Odunze, DJ Moore, somebody, or even Luther Burden not being a thing until next year. And I'm a Luther Burden guy. Like, somebody's taking the hits. So this is actually, I think, worrisome as a whole, as much as that I can be like, hey, I'm in on Loveland. I think he's a top 10 tight end in 2026, 100%. But I just wanted to include that into the conversation because Andrew brought it up, that breakout season for Caleb Williams. But what I always say is, like, when you have situations like this, buy the cake, not the icing being the pieces. Buy the cake and Caleb Williams. Just take the equation out of it and say, I get Caleb Williams. I'm going to enjoy that breakout season instead of trying to pick, is it going to be more Odunze or Burden? And maybe it's just a mishmash of all 3 for the entire season.
Yeah, I strongly agree with that. I will be investing heavily in a lot of these quarterbacks who have kind of crowded pass catcher rooms now. Just get the quarterback, and then you don't have to worry about where the ball's going as long as it's caught. All right, who's your first Dynasty hold long-term investment, Jake?
Yeah, let's go back to Ben Johnson's old team. And Isaac, not the car, it's TeSlaa, not TeSlaa, just so everybody out there knows. It's actually the harder pronunciations on the second part. It's TeSlaa. So TeSlaa, now with the Lions. We saw the rumors that kind of got squashed to a degree about Jameson Williams potentially being up for a trade, and that just the Lions kind of like cooled off on him, and it got squashed, but they kind of squashed it in a way of like, well, it's not happening now. There's still the possibility that Jameson Williams doesn't come back in free agency. And we are talking about the Lions, and we're talking about, now it's no Ben Johnson, but they're not going to change so much so the fact that I kind of drew some comparisons for TeSlaa to Darnell Mooney and Alshon Jeffrey kind of a mixture. The reason I went with Alshon Jeffrey to pull into Mooney is because I don't think he's quite as fast as Mooney, but kind of that big play, can play big slot, can play outside. And the opportunity here is kind of similar to Loveland. Is like they made this draft pick. It like wasn't super high, but it was enough of a draft pick cost to say, hey, they see something with him and they see potential too for him. Worst case, he's the wide receiver 3 in this team. And of course, in fantasy, that would hurt us. But if he was the number 2 wide receiver for them next year with Jared Goff in this offense, I think TeSlaa can be wide receiver 3 or 4. It would be inconsistent, just like what I brought up with Jayden Higgins before. But I like the landing spot for the potential on what happens with the roster potentially for 2026.
One thing I want to keep in mind when thinking about TeSlaa is I don't want to punish him as a future fantasy asset for the fact that I think the Lions overpaid so much, giving up 2/3 to move up to get him. Like, yes, I think that was
that's
an overpay,
telling too.
But it does say something about what they think about this guy. even if I thought it was bad process. And I don't want to say like, oh, because I thought it was a bad use of resources in the NFL draft, that means he's a bad player to invest in fantasy. Those are not equivalent. And I want to like remind myself of that when looking at him. Erickson, what's your kind of approach to TeSlaa in let's say dynasty drafts in general this year?
To be honest, I don't love going after this type of player. Wide receivers that end up going rounds 3, rounds 4. These guys, again, I've talked about this certain player whenever I reference these kinds of guys. It's Cedric Tillman, right? Like, what's the difference between this guy and Cedric Tillman? I'm not saying Cedric Tillman specifically, but he has a couple spike weeks here and there. Can you ever flip him for anything? Is he going to be a top 12 fantasy, top 24 fantasy wide receiver? I don't know. I'm very skeptical that that's ever going to happen for TeSlaa. So for me,
I don't think that's going to happen for very many wide receivers in this draft class.
I agree. And that's, for me, my strategy is give me a running back. Just give me another running back. Like, once we're out of the first 2 rounds of these receivers.
Well, sure. But this is the wide receiver show.
But we're asking you guys strategy with this type of receiver. And I said, I want a running back instead. Like, that's my approach.
Okay. No, like, that's certainly fair. I'm just having fun with you. But like, we had to find wide receivers that are worth holding. And I think that in the rate, like, let's be honest, like late second, early third in dynasty drafts, like that point, how many of those picks do you hit on anyway? So that's why I'm saying I'll hold them. You're maybe right. Cedric Tillman at this point. I mean, honestly, that is a completely sidebar. The fact that the Deion Johnson, I would just go get Cedric Tillman for free now because nobody wants him now. And I'm not that worried about Deontay Johnson. But point being in this is that maybe in 3 years, you hold him on your bench and you just move on. He's the guy you cut as you have to make rookie picks. But for that cost, I'm willing to take the chance on his landing spot that, hey, maybe Jameson Williams is not back next year.
I think that's a good point, the Jameson Williams thing. Like, if he does get dealt, then you could then just flip TeSlaa immediately. Like,
or just not re-signed. Yeah. He's been around long enough that he's going to be a free agent. That's insane to think
about. Erickson, let's go to your next one. And we can go pretty quickly on this because I think it's going to check a lot of the same boxes as your first dynasty hold long-term investment.
Yeah, because it's Luther Burden, wide receiver for the Chicago Bears, who, again, it was a surprising landing spot. I don't think a lot of people were pegging the Bears to draft a receiver this high again for the second straight year, but they took Luther Burden. And the first thing that comes out of Ben Johnson's mouth when he talks about Luther Burden, they asked him, "But what do you think about Luther?" And he said, "Stud." It's the first thing that came out of his mouth. Actually, the Coach Speak Index tweeted out. So he's a playmaker waiting to happen. For 6 foot, 200 plus pounds, it's rare to see someone with his movement skills. He can stop at a dime, he can immediately accelerate, give him a little bit of space. He can make big things happen. A dangerous player and weapon. I see big things in his future. So going back to Ben Johnson having his hands on this offense, what if he just decides, like, no, I want Luther Burden to be my primary slot receiver in a hybrid Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jameson Williams mold, where even last year, when you remember when they started getting Jameson Williams more schemed touches, and every time he touched the ball, it looked like he was going to break in half because he's a much smaller, when you compare him to Luther Burden, Jameson Williams is much more slender than a Luther Burden, where Luther Burden is more rocked up, 6 foot, 200 pounds. And one of the things that he did best at Missouri was just breaking tackles, like an insane force missed tackle rate at 35%. So clearly Ben Johnson sees the upside with a Luther Burden player. And I know that he has a lot of issues in terms of how does he run routes? Is he used as a downfield threat? But if Ben Johnson decides, well, I want to feature this guy and get him scheme touches 7 to 8 per week, well, then that's going to score us fantasy points. And right now, he's kind of being, I think, written off because, well, DJ Moore and Rome Odunze are there. Those guys are locked and loaded, and maybe they are. But what if they're not? And Luther Burden is the future that Ben Johnson wants in his offense to build around. So that's something I'm trying to keep in mind. And look, I look at Luther Burden in my rankings, I think every single day, and I'm not sure if I should move him up or move him down because I get all the arguments for him. But I think that I'm seeing him fall more in rookie drafts where I'm now more open to potentially taking a shot on him just because, hey, well, Ben Johnson likes this guy. Well, maybe I should too. He's the coach. He's the offensive play caller. And Burden has upside that we saw his sophomore year when he was an absolute monster at Missouri. So Luther Burden for me, I think the Bears are just a very polarizing team in general when we're looking at it from a long-term perspective.
Just very quickly, Erickson, how are you ranking? Because I see these guys go together in a lot of rookie drafts. Luther Burden, Matthew Golden, and Emeka Egbuka.
So I have Egbuka first, and I feel most confident about that. I feel like he's going to be a guy that's going to catch 100 balls every single year when he's a starter. Like, I don't care if it doesn't happen this year, but it's going to happen eventually, and I think that he's locked.
I mean, he could have been chosen here as a dynasty hold long-term investment given the situation he's in too.
That's fair.
Yes, I was contemplating putting him here as well, but
I figured that was a layup.
That's exactly. I was like, once Godwin or Evans goes, like this guy is going to just absolutely smash. But I felt like the Bears is just. I don't be dialed in and locked in. It has to be DJ Moore. It has to be Rome Odunze because Ben Johnson didn't draft those guys. Like, they're carryovers from the last regime.
Go ahead. That's
Jake.
the Odunze concern.
Yeah.
Is that like the Odunze not getting the work out of the slot now?
Yeah.
Like that's so. To kind of answer your question that you asked him, Worm, I mean, just to move on quickly because there's a lot of agreement here. Like, I actually go Ibuka, Higgins, Golden, Burden. But if you told me ceiling, Burden was in my tier 1 of wide receivers with McMillan and Hunter. Those were my 3. And I am a huge fan of Burden. Like, I think his ceiling is top 15 in fantasy. And everything Erickson's saying is the point here is that Ben Johnson could just be like, that was the one I drafted. The other 2 guys are fine to be my number 2 and number 3. Like, this is a potential real, like, one of my biggest sliders down in post-draft rankings was Odunze. I had Odunze pushing top 20, figuring he was going to be number 2. And now, like, I think there's a serious risk that he's not even the number 2 on this team.
Yeah, I that's interesting that you have Higgins kind of in there too. I think he's going later than the other 3 in the rookie draft. So
I think I'm one of the highest on Higgins.
Would you have? Yeah. I have Higgins. I moved Higgins up to 4, so I have him ahead of Burden and Golden. I'm okay. Sold.
So do I.
You're up there too.
And I don't think Jake, I don't know if you have it ranked this way, but I put Burden 1 spot ahead of Golden because of the upside. Because upside wins,
flipped, man. But they're back.
Yeah.
It's it's the uncertainty versus, and not that there's not that much uncertainty. We don't even have Golden on our lists. But I think that Golden steps in as the 1 or 2, but that's not a guarantee either with how many. I thought, to reference a tweet, you said more myself, one of the best ones is the Packers. I don't need number 1s. I just draft 15 wide receiver 2s. Like, just that's all they do. So
and I mean,
a perfect example.
The fact that Matthew Golden's wearing 22. Oh God, I had to move him down the ranks, boys.
You should have dropped him about 22 spots in your rankings for that. That was brutal.
Oh man.
Yeah. No, I think Burton is one of the most fascinating players in drafts right now. So I had to make a decision between him and Ibuka, and I went with Ibuka. Yes. But I was like kind of toying with the idea of like,
you made the right call, dude. Just lock in, dude. He's gonna be catching 100 balls a year, dude.
I was like, the answer is Ibuka, but like, boy, was I enamored with Burden at one point. All right, Jake, you've got a tight end here for your long-term investment.
I do, but I also I want to caution people at the same time because everybody wanted this team to draft a tight end. They're get a tight end, get a tight end, get a tight end, get a tight end. And I'm like, that's cool. And Oronde Gadsden ended up in a good potential long-term opportunity. Who's in front of him? Will Dissly and Tyler Conklin. And if one of those guys wasn't even on the roster week 1, it wouldn't shock me. It's a bunch of dudes. Talk about 2s. This is a bunch of tight end 2s on the Chargers. However, this is what I keep saying. What did they do in the draft first? They drafted Hampton after signing Harris. And then we're not going to have the conversation Hampton versus Harris. That's a whole nother show when we talk running backs. But my point being is it's Harbaugh. This is a run-heavy offense. So let's just chill a little bit on Justin Herbert in the passing offense when they also drafted Trey Harris to get probably finally their answer to be the downfield threat that's not Quentin Johnson and all the other schlubs. But you're looking at this as Ladd McConkey. Trey Harris would be my 2, and then potentially Gadsden next year after you factor in how much is running back heavy. So I like Gadsden. I think he's a definitive hold if you need a tight end premium, even better. I think I compared him to Kellen Winslow Jr., like serious some upside with him. However, as excited as I can be for the landing spot and the opportunity, I still wouldn't draft him like mid-early second round in Dynasty draft. I think that if that's his cost because everybody's excited, this is one of those ones where everybody's excited about it. Everybody likes the prospect. Everybody likes the opportunity where it might overvalue his draft position. So I like him, but I just want to throw that out too, that don't go too crazy on Gadsden.
Erickson, what do you think about Gadsden?
I mean, he's one of these tight ends where we know what is he going to do when he gets on the field is catch the ball. Like that's going to be clearly that's what his role is, and that's what the Chargers envision him doing. He's not going to necessarily be a player again as a kind of slot wide receiver tight end hybrid. A lot of times these guys fizzle out, and because they can't find what role fits them best. But that's the reason why the Chargers drafted him on day 3, and it's why you shouldn't overvalue him in drafts, like Jake said. But hey, take a stab on him, see how he does his rookie year. Oh, he splashes. Maybe he has a Chigakonkwo-esque rookie year where he gains value, and then you can just flip it because then the Chargers
people would lose their minds.
Exactly. Like he breaks up an 80-yard touchdown because he's fast on all the linebackers, and you can just flip him for value the next year when the Chargers decide to draft a real tight end in 2026. So that's the move I would make. So I like this call here.
Our Dynasty Rookie Draft Simulator lets you complete a mock in minutes with no waiting between picks. Customize your league settings to match your league's exact format. Premium subscribers can test trade scenarios by mocking with their traded draft picks. Prepare for rookie drafts and Dynasty startup drafts in one place. Use the Dynasty Rookie Draft Simulator to dominate your rookie draft today at fantasypros.com/simulator. We've got 4 names left. It's the late round sleepers, deep league stashes. We'll go a little quicker on these because, again, they are later round guys. So don't need to spend as much time here. Erickson, who you got to start us off?
Elic Ayomanor for the Tennessee Titans, wide receiver that they drafted at the end of the 4th round. I think that he has an opportunity to earn targets in this Titans passing game. They have Calvin Ridley. He is kind of that one established guy in this offense. They signed veteran Tyler Lockett. It remains to be seen what he's got left in the tank. He was total dust last year. So Ayomanor, even though he wasn't the first receiver that the Titans drafted, I am taking him 10 times out of 10 over Chimere DK. I want no part of Chimere DK. Like Ayomanor was someone that I flagged as a rookie sleeper to target in fantasy drafts. I'm actually surprised that he fell almost into round 5 entirely. I thought the Titans got a really good value with him. And I think that his best football is yet to come. Like, really, he's only had 2 years where he's really been producing at Stanford, and he's always been putting up numbers. 125 catches, nearly 2,000 yards, and 12 touchdowns in 2 seasons at Stanford after redshirting his first year. So he has one of the highest dominator ratings in the class from the data that I looked at, 39%. And he's a big body wide receiver that can play that X role for Cam Ward. So is it possible Cam Ward just doesn't fire and this offense is terrible? Yeah, that's totally within the range of outcomes. Then obviously Ayomanor is going to become nothing. But what if Cam Ward elevates this offense like a Jayden Daniels did his rookie year? Well, now you're getting Ayomanor as a day 3 pick that, now we have actually something here. He's connecting with this new quarterback and they grow together. I'm trying to find that pairing, like who could be the next Stroud and Dell type of quarterback rookie connection. And Ayomanor to me stands out. And I think the fact that Chimere DK went before him, I think that's soured people on Ayomanor potentially, and that it's hitting his draft stock. He's going to be going later in rookie drafts. So again, I talked about like not liking the Cedric Tillman archetype of player, and of course, like that's one of my comparisons for Ayomanor because my comp was actually Cedric Tillman. So I'm basically talking out about both sides of my mouth. Is that the right Worm? Is that how you say it? Talking out of both sides of your mouth? Is that
yeah.
I know we did a show where I said the wrong version of that.
I forget what you said wrong, but you did. I think you said like, I'm talking out of like the left side of my mouth or something like that.
Or neither. I'm talking out of neither sides of my mouth.
Yeah,
something along those lines. But if I were to take a dip back into the Cedric Tillman pool of player, it will be Elic Ayomanor because of the opportunity, and I just liked his college prospect profile.
Jake, I want to go quickly in this section, but this is the one guy that I did want to follow up on because I thought he could have gone higher than he did in the draft. What are your quick thoughts on Ayomanor?
I'm going to try and talk out of there you go. Like I'm talking out of the middle part of my mouth. Look, I don't disagree with much of what was said here. My concern is because of the draft capital. So my concern about Ayomanor was that I'm not sure he has the speed. Like the one that my knock for him was his speed. He doesn't stack DBs well. And for everybody knows what I'm talking about there. He also doesn't continue his speed too well out of breaks. And I'm like looking at that like, okay, but he had some really great performances. Obviously, everybody knows the game against Travis Hunter has been said a million times. So can he succeed? He was in my tier 3 of wide receivers. That's 2 tiers in front of DK. But I watched what the Titans did, and my comp for DK was kind of like that Martavis Bryant speed deep threat. I just don't know that maybe that's what they prefer. This is the team that brought in Van Jefferson and tried to still make him a thing. And they're kind of, they have Tyler Lockett as their slot wide receiver now. But looking at the future and with Cam Ward, I could see both hitting. I could see that if one was going to flame out faster, I actually think it might be Ayomanor if I'm correct about my concerns. So again, it's a tier 3 wide receiver. I have him 2 tiers over DK. I would have taken Ayomanor over DK. But because of what happened with their draft, I just have legitimate concerns. That being said, we are talking flyers. We are talking about stashes at this point. I would absolutely stash, honestly, both if I could. The Tillman comp is actually a good one too. Like I thought some like Michael Gallup, like I can kind of see that, but I think like even Michael Gallup had even better stacking ability than Ayomanor does. So just concerns of that his type of wide receiver doesn't hit in the NFL as much as it used to.
Let's go to the next sleeper here, Jake.
Oh, yeah. So I'm going to go to Seattle. And I don't think a lot of people are looking at it, but Tory Hunter. That would be interesting. Bring over you remember that Twins wire? The outfielder?
He'd catch a lot of passes.
He could catch a lot of balls. Tory Horton. So I actually think that, so what I said for him is this is what we all wanted Chase Claypool to be. And he wasn't. So I'm bringing that up to say, like, that's also the downside of him, is that big guy who has the speed. I kind of the UNC guy that the Ravens just drafted, Devontae Walker, similar. He's at best for us in fantasy would be that boomer bust wide receiver 4, not even a wide receiver 3. He's going to be that guy that, like, man, he had a huge game. Heck, Nelson Aguilar on this team, although I don't think he's completely Nelson Aguilar, but that kind of wide receiver, it's like you end up with 50 catches, but it's 900 yards and 8 or 9 touchdowns. I think that's what Horton could be. And I think for looking at what the Seahawks are kind of moving towards and the fact that, like, they're shifting they traded DK Metcalf in this roster now, I think there's an opening for Horton, maybe in year 2, probably more year 3. But this is, like, again, these are deep. You're taking flyers in round 3 or 4. Like, who's somebody worth doing that with? I think Horton's a fine sleeper. Although Erickson's smirking. I don't know if this is good or bad, the smirk over here.
No, I love the Tory Horton call because I'm going to be emptying the clip when Cooper Kupp.
Better than Torrey Hunter?
When Cooper Kupp gets hurt again in week 3, Tory Horton's going to be
right
in and having a match. Yeah, I love this. I love this call.
All right, Erickson, let's go to your next sleeper.
Sticking with the Tennessee Titans, my only undrafted guy I'm going to talk about, Xavier Restrepo, wide receiver.
That was the one I was teasing
Miami.
At the beginning.
And look, maybe his agent was playing 4D chess when he told him to run his 40-yard dash with an injured hamstring, so he'd run a 4.9 and get undrafted. But because he went undrafted, he was able to sign with the Tennessee Titans, which gives him, in my opinion, one of the best landing spots for an undrafted free agent because he's with his former college quarterback, Cam Ward. If there's any player that's going to be going to bat for Xavier Restrepo, it's the guy that is the future franchise of the Tennessee Titans in Cam Ward. So Restrepo, dominant the last 2 years producing at Miami. I think he's got a really stocky build. He's not a small slot receiver. Like, he's bit 209 pounds, like a stocky build. So I think that he can take some hits over the middle. Again, the speed is the big concern, even though I think that his 40-yard dash is more about the fact that he wasn't healthy and his agent's like, oh, let's run this 40-yard dash. And he was hurt and it absolutely nuked his draft stock. But we look at his speed at the NFL Combine, 8th fastest speed in the gauntlet drill. So I don't think that this guy is so slow that he can't produce at the NFL. And if he is, then he's going to get cut from the Titans. And then you can just get rid of him off your roster. So when we're looking at players that take that dart throw on with your last rookie draft pick, I like Restrepo because if he can't make it with the Titans, he's not making it with anybody, right? So it's just really easy to cut bait with him and move on. Whereas, oh, he made the roster. Like, oh, he's starting in 3 receiver sets from the slot. Like, oh, Tyler Lockett's missing practice with a veteran rest day. He's getting the reps in, and he knows his quarterback. So I think for me, Restrepo, again, talking about, don't love a lot of the receivers getting late in this class, but Restrepo for me, just because he's free and Cam Ward is the quarterback, I think that he's the perfect guy to go after.
Mm-hmm. I like Restrepo a lot too. We did a 5-round Superflex rookie mock with me, Fitz, and Bogman. We taped it yesterday, and we got to a certain point in the 5th round where it's just like, I don't really love anybody here. I liked Konata Restrepo as a prospect, and there's an opportunity, so sure, I don't care that he went undrafted. So I'm right there with the Erickson on him.
There's another wide receiver who is his size that was wide receiver 4 with the right team for quite a while as the number 3 option. I brought up Tyler Boyd in the pre-draft, and now not 100% the same kind of wide receiver, but the consistency fantasy production wise of him, or like, and I'm saying this because I want to say the name of Jameson Crowder. So I did my mashup for him was Boyd Crowder. If anybody's a Justified fan, you love that. And this is why we're hoping for Restrepo, is because now I can talk about Boyd Crowder. But the truth is that's, I didn't want to lean into that when we were talking about your previous one with Ayomanor, but if I had to do a pecking order today, and this is the one I'm struggling with because I did have Restrepo over both. And if I was doing a pecking order of who I think succeeds in the NFL, I would actually go Restrepo and then the other two, and Ayomanor and DK. So the fact that he went undrafted, I hope that your joke is right, that like there's something here and they just ignore the running because it was just he wasn't that slow. You watch him play, he's not that slow, but he isn't fast either. So I just hope that he sticks. But I think that he might be capped in that wide receiver 4 for us in fantasy, even if he does hit.
Jake, who's the last sleeper?
I'm going to, we brought up Cooper Kupp already. Let's go to his old team, Konata Mumpfield. Actually, the comparison I said for him was Sterling Shepard, and really dangerous after the catch. Not the fastest as well. It's similar to what we're talking about with Restrepo. But once he has the ball in his hand, Mumpfield after the catch, looks really good. Looks like somebody who can succeed in the NFL in that aspect. And the reason I love this too is because, a wide receiver who isn't that fast going to the Rams, great after the catch, that's just their guys. So the fact that the Rams drafted Konata Mumpfield, and yes, I don't think he's going to get much of anything behind Nacua and Adams, but by the way, Nacua at this point, are we heading towards what could his career have been if he could stay healthy? Or even Adams at this point in his career, similar to the Horton situation, one injury away. I think if you look at this depth chart, it's not Tutu Atwell, it's not the other answers on this team, that Mumpfield could find his way into starting as a rookie. And I'm not going to say you have to go get him, but there's a path on this depth chart now to be starting with just an injury or maybe even two if it takes it.
Erickson, any quick thoughts?
I don't always draft receivers that go around 7, but when I do, they're on the Rams. So.
All right, we'll get out of here on that. That was our must-draft wide receivers and tight end rookies this season. Be sure to keep an eye out for our next episode where the three of us will be talking about the same thing for the running backs and quarterbacks.
Which we're about to do, which is why we're wearing the same stuff on that show, just to be clear.
No,
you guys weren't going to get changed? I have another shirt. I'm not ready to go.
Erickson's prepared. All right, for Jake and Erickson, I'm Ryan. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. We'll see you next time.